Kawabunga.
Hey, let's start the game!
Japanese advertising is one of a kind. When video sharing started getting big back in ye olde days of the web, it opened up a whole new world to me. Oddly enough, one thing that fascinated me was international marketing. There's something so curious about advertisements from around the globe. Getting to peer into other cultures was cool, especially before everything kind of became homogeneous like it is now. I watched all sorts of wild commercials from Germany, Saudi Arabia, France, as well as a host of local commercials in the States.
What is that? It's huge, Tom, huge!
But of all the strange televised sales pitches that I've ever seen, the mascot for the Japanese branch of Pepsi sticks out prominently. Quite simply, Pepsiman is a humanoid aluminum soda can that strongly encouraged people to drink Pepsi. The adverts would show Pepsiman delivering the drink to people in need, often at the cost of his own well-being. What a guy. They even had a Pepsi woman to shill for Pepsi Twist, and it left me feeling confused. Anyway, aside from bizarre aluminum jiggly bits, these commercials are actually brilliant. For being as old as they are, they're shot well and they look great. There's a blend of traditional Americana, surrealistic Japanese beats, and that distinct warm 90s glow. The campaign was successful enough to where Pepsiman was included as an unlockable character in the Japanese Sega Saturn port of Fighting Vipers in 1996. The character's popularity in Japan remained high, and in 1998, Japanese game developer Kid was contracted to produce a low-budget Pepsiman game for the PlayStation. I've seen screenshots and clips of this game as far back as I can remember having internet at home. I always assumed that it was a crappy cash-in marketing game, like VIP with Pamela Anderson or Mary-Kate and Ashley Winner's Circle. Jesus Christ. So I recently came into a copy of Pepsiman.
And I'll do the same to you if you subscribe.
And I had to try it for myself. I can't believe I'm saying it, but Pepsiman is actually kind of amazing.
I told you what I was going to do.
You may have suspected as much by looking at it, but the story isn't terribly deep. There's a random American dude, played by actor Mike Butters. He sips Pepsi and hears the amazing Pepsiman theme from inside the can. We cut to him in his apartment grabbing snacks and, of course, several cans of Pepsi. He simply says,
Hey, let's start the game!
From here, we see Pepsiman get a briefing from a truck driver that was supposed to refill a local vending machine with, well, you can probably guess the drink. He says that people will riot if they don't get their beverage, and thus, Pepsiman to the rescue. Our hero makes it to the machine and does that strange hand gesture that I guess fills people with Pepsi, and the day is saved. And this is just how it goes for the rest of the game. You watch Mike Butters strung out on soft drinks, a character asks for help, and away we go. Personally, I really love surrealistic advertising, something that the Japanese have always excelled at, and thankfully, it stays silly without crossing into overly nonsensical territory. It's lighthearted and it's just trying to sell you a product. Mike Butters is appropriately goofy and slightly aloof, but it seems like he had fun filming this ridiculous stuff, and his positivity is infectious. I play a lot of dark video games, and I watch a lot of dark films, and I read a lot of dark books, so it was nice to see a smiling, happy character with a blood sugar level of probably 700. All's well that ends well. In a nutshell, I adore the look of this game. The environments, which include levels set in San Francisco, Texas, and New York City, are colorful and full of life. The 3D geometry lunges out at you from either side, with beautiful little 2D sprites filling in the space. In particular, I really love the variety of the NPCs. Obviously, as far as the PS1 goes, this isn't going to challenge Soul Reaver, but I didn't expect it to, and for a low-budget 3D runner, the game ran well, and I never felt like any of my runs were cheated by technical hiccups. Now, of course, you have to understand that this is a marketing vehicle, so expect to be seeing that Pepsi logo at all times. The final level takes place in, where else? Pepsi City, so be prepared for that advert nail to be driven into your brain just a little harder before things wrap up. But again, I fully expected all of that, and I was pleasantly surprised by how much personality and charm the rest of the game had. It didn't feel like a generic, hollow marketing scam. And the soundtrack is just as charming as the visuals. If you know anything about this game or the character, you've most certainly heard the Pepsiman theme song. The tune is very reminiscent of the old Adam West Batman theme. It's a super catchy little number that also works surprisingly well as a music bed while you're running through each course. The little surf rock riff is really groovy, and it was stuck in my head for days. Each course has a remix of the song, so it didn't lose its charm or become too repetitive. The sound effects are pretty simple and they work fine, and that little when you collect cans is oddly satisfying, and I can't explain why. So it's certainly not complicated, but the sound design meshes well with the quaint visuals. So, obviously games where you keep running were nothing new in 1999, with 2D games like Atomic Runner Chelnuff dating back to 1988, and Penguin Adventure on the MSX dating back to 1986. Penguin Adventure, by the way, was created by some Japanese guy that didn't make anything else and is probably broke now. Anyway, point is, Pepsiman wasn't wholly original, and some of the concepts are ripped straight from other games of the time. But this might be the prototypical 3D runner, predating games like Sonic Adventure 2 and releasing a full decade before Temple Run blew up. And in that way, Pepsiman is kind of a landmark, really. The concept is simple: run, collect cans of Pepsi, and avoid hazards. The controls are easy to grasp, but they're surprisingly involved. Pepsiman can jump, slide, sprint for a short burst, and skid to a near stop. Again, it's simple, but you'd be amazed at how intense some stages can get. You'll sprint to get ahead of a motorcycle, jump over a giant pit, slide under a semi-truck, and then burst through a wall before getting a barrel stuck over your head, which then inverts your controls for a short while. I was pleasantly surprised at the level of challenge, and it was pretty addicting. Now, I'm not a speedrunner, but I can absolutely understand why people run this game. It has that fun, addicting, just one more try type of vibe to it. The more cans you collect, the more lives you'll have going into the next stage, and a little course marker on the UI shows how much of the run you have left. There are even a few parts where you skate or surf, and these sections demand precision and quick reflexes. So, this kind of brings me to my remonstration portion of the review. For the most part, the game is a lot of fun and mostly a fair challenge. But make no mistake, Pepsiman has plenty of old school punishment. This is code for bullshit. At times, my happy smile and cheery body bop gave way to eye rolls and extra hard controller squeezes. You know the type, where the plastic makes that cracking sound under tension. Fair play. Most of the time, it was just me being sloppy and bad. Skill issue, no doubt. But other times, the game just had some corny nonsense, like a highway sign falling right in front of you with a millisecond to respond. And the second time Pepsiman has the waste bin over his head, you essentially need to memorize the path. And if you make a single mistake, well, tough titties, back to the checkpoint. It got kind of tedious, to be honest with you, which is something your dad used to think about you as a kid. But these moments were pretty brief, and once I got my pattern down, it was really satisfying to hit that smooth one-shot run. This is basically the Dark Souls of running games. Had to get it in. At release, Pepsiman received moderate critical praise, but it was seen as nothing more than a curious marketing gimmick. Several years later, the game developed an international cult following, and Pepsiman started appearing regularly at speedrunning events. It's so cool that such a quirky little game can get attention from a community that loves and supports each other. Unless you go on Reddit. Frankly, look, I can't think of a clever way to wrap this review up, so with that, I'll quote a review of Pepsiman that I found online. My hope is that it brings you as much optimism for the future as it did me. Quote, "Where to begin? I feel I must preface this by saying that I understand how some poorly misguided reviewers are left unimpressed by Pepsiman for the PS1. I too enjoyed gargling cum in my youth, but now all I gargle is Pepsiman's effervescent and cola-flavored nuts in my mouth. These charlatans that would give this game any less than a perfect score are creatures to be pitied and then euthanized humanely with 3 lethal injections of Coca-Cola."
Spread my cheeks so you can see the fucking steak nuggets!